What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Johnny B podcast. The verdict is still out whether we're going to rename this thing something way cooler than the Johnny B podcast. Truth be told, this is just some insider info. I just didn't want to start another Instagram, so I said, "What's my Instagram handle already?" And my handle on everything, even back if you're OG and you go back to MySpace, if it's still there, if Justin Timberlake didn't completely burn the files, I'm at the Johnny V, even on MySpace. So that's why we just went with it. But maybe we'll be cool like Craig Rochelle. He's got his leadership podcast. We have all these cool people that have really cool titles and things. So we'll see. Who knows? Maybe one day. But for today, we're just hanging out, doing what we do, talking all things church culture. We've said it once and we'll continue to say it. We're just a bunch of church kids having conversations that probably only make sense to other church kids. And there's just a niche space, the church culture world, but we're not alone, and that's the key component, is that you're not alone in what you're going through. You're not alone in the conversations that you're maybe having in your head, and you're thinking, man, I wonder if anybody else is thinking this. I wonder if anybody else is tripped up over this. I wonder if anybody else is struggling in this way. Chances are there's somebody in your shoes right now. So that's why we're hosting conversations like this. Today, I've got a new friend on here, Pastor Mike. He's about to just rock our socks. If what he's about to say is anything compared to his daily schedule and routine, y'all just get a pen and a paper. It's going to be incredible. So without further ado, would you welcome my new friend, Pastor Mike Santiago? Did I say that right?
Yep,
Santiago?
that's right. That's right.
Come on, man. Oh man, dude, thank you so much for jumping on. We made this happen real quick. You've got the fresh fade.
Totally.
I've got the hat day. I'm gonna go. I'm in this weird, which you don't care, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. I'm in this weird like hair thing, and I think it has something to do with my age. I don't want to be early midlife crisis level, but I'm at that point in my mid 30s, maybe late 30s. It depends on your definition. At
For sure.
38, where like you still want to be like, you still feel like, oh man, I want to be cutting edge and cool and like, but then there's some things at my age. You're probably, well, you might be younger, but at my age that I just can't do anymore. I can't responsibly do.
Yeah.
And right now you can't see, but right now I've kind of got this half mullet thing happening, and me,
Yeah.
me and my wife have been back and forth. She's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Babe, it's the thing. Like, it's just cool. It's the trend." And she's like, "Yeah, but it's not for you. Like, it's for someone else." But anyway, Pastor Mike, would you just introduce yourself? Let us know who you are, where you pastor. I know you've got like 25,000 locations.
Sure.
No, I'm kidding. God's just doing incredible things at Focus Church. Can you just tell us all about you and what you got going on?
Yeah, I planted a church alongside my wife Ashton, who we've been married now for coming up on 18 years. We planted our church 11 years ago in our living room right outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, in a town called Apex. We had never lived there before. The only reason we picked Apex, people ask me all the time, how did you know that it was, you were called? We were like, well, the lady that we rented from just didn't do a credit check. That's really the only reason why we said yes to Apex, because she didn't check our credit score. And so we planted the church in our living room. I got a job at the local Panera Bread Cafe. If you don't have one of those where you're listening from, it's like a bakery. And I just was bussing tables, $7.25 an hour. And I would just invite people to my house that I saw praying over their broccoli cheddar soup or whatever. And we started a little Bible study on Sunday nights. And then 9 months into our journey, we launched like public services at an elementary school, and then from an elementary school to a community center, from a community center to another local high school, from a local high school to another local church on Saturday nights because we couldn't find space. And then the Lord, I'm making a decade-long story in 10 seconds, but the Lord provided a merger to happen between a legacy denominational church and our church plant. And that was as fun as it sounds. They call it a merger. I call it a murder because one of the churches had to die. And so we're on the other side of it now. And to God be the glory, we've gone from a couple of people in our living room to now we have 4 locations, We average about 1,700 on the weekends, and it's a video venue model, so a franchise model. And to God be the glory, we're seeing some cool things happen. I get to serve on the executive presbytery of the Assemblies of God USA, which, if you don't know what that means, I'm a board member of one of the largest Pentecostal denominations in the world, and I serve as the under 40 representative for all ministers under the age of 40. So if that gives you any insight to my age, I'm in my mid 30s, and I get to serve on that team for 4 more years, should the Lord tarry. And so I'm 36 years old, and I get to go to the metropolis of Springfield, Missouri, 7 times a year for board meetings. And then there in Springfield, Missouri, there's a department called the Church Multiplication Network, which is the church planting department for the Assemblies of God, CMN for short. And I get to serve on their lead team and on kind of the strategy team that helps navigate through church planting in the current day and age that we live in. So that's my ministry career in a really short synopsis. We have 3 children. We became parents within the first year of our marriage, and then we became parents again once that child was only 5 months old. We were pregnant again, and then once that child was only 8 months old, we became pregnant again. So by the time I was 23, we already had 3 kids. And so I have a 16-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a soon-to-be 13-year-old. And we love life. And I'm an Uber driver for those 3 kids, and I'm a Cash App ATM. That's my whole job.
Come
I'm
on.
not. What does Pastor do all week? Well, I drive my kids wherever they tell me to drive them, and I send them Cash App whenever they ask me for Cash App.
Wow. I love that. If you've never planted a church or been a part of the process of planting a church, I tell everybody it's almost like your rite of passage to real ministry. It is next level. My wife and I had the opportunity to be on a kind of a launch team in 2017 in Central Florida, right across from Legoland. So it was a whole thing. But but just being in that world and in that space, it was just incredible. I still reference it though. I mean, even now, almost a decade later, I look back because there's a hunger there. What is that old saying? The hungry dog runs faster. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like there's something about
Yeah.
when you're hungry and when you don't got. We would go to the farmer's market, bro, and hand out flyers and the whole deal. Like we're giving away chocolate bars. Like it was wild. It was just, I look back and I'm like, we were there 13, 14 months and just to kind of establish some systems and different things. And then we transitioned. But I look back at those 13, 14 months and I'm like, it was insane. But I still, again, I pull so much strategy from that. And again, that hunger and that, just that drive is insane. You mentioned Assemblies of God. We're
Mhm.
cousins because I grew up Church of God, so it's kind
Yep.
of like that's a Pentecostal joke for my Baptist friends, but
Yep.
um, very familiar. There's this tone in the voice of a Pentecostal preacher. You just know, if I heard your voice from the across the Starbucks, I'd probably be like,
You
that
just
guy's
know.
probably a Pentecostal preacher. But you mentioned CMN; they're doing incredible things. I've got several friends who have kind of walked through that process with CMN, and I mean, I get on their Instagram, I'm like, what is happening? Like they're just crushing it, and I mean, it's just incredible to see what God's doing there. And you were kind of being humble when you said it's one of the largest Pentecostal organizations in the world. I do believe it's the
It is.
largest Pentecostal church
Yep.
in the world, on the planet, right? So I mean, it's wild what God is doing, and just incredible uh people there. I love it. I love it. Well, man, I want you just to kind of pull back the curtain for us. We'll start with the good stuff because
Mm.
they put the froth on the latte on the top for a
That's right.
reason, because we're going to start with the good stuff. But I want you just in this season right now, uh, I mean, however you want to frame it up, you can. I think a lot of leaders that I'm talking to, there's kind of 2 eras. If we could just use a Taylor Swift reference, we're in our like post pandemic era, and I think we're over calling it that in a lot of ways because now it's
Mhm.
just we're just doing the thing again. But
Yep.
I think so much shifted and changed then, uh, that created new systems and new structures and new things. But just talk to us for the next few minutes just about what's winning right now. What are you seeing that's just working? and winning in your organization?
That's great. There are two eras, if I could steal the term as well, to every pastor. There's the era where you start, and then there's the era where you get serious. Same is true for exercise. I've been exercising for a long time. I started exercising a long time ago, but I don't know if I've ever been serious about exercising. So there's the era when you start, and then the era when you get serious. And the same is true for ministry. I think what happened in 2020 shook things up, and we've all restarted, but I'm not sure if we've all gotten serious about reaching people. And so what's working for us right now, it has worked for us for a long time. And we try our best to stay within the guardrails of what we are good at. I think that's our biggest strength as a church. People say, how did your church grow? So much. And I think it's because we've said no to so many other things. If you came to church at Focus Church, which is the name of our church, on a Sunday, you would find that we're not overly complicated. There's not a lot of ministries that we offer. We have kept our blinders on to about 5 things that we do, and that tends to work really well. So, we don't look to have a huge men's ministry or huge women's ministry or a big private Christian school. None of those things are wrong. But for us, we've learned we're only 11 years old as a church, so we're just about to hit puberty. We aren't old enough or mature enough to be able to handle the widening of our capacity, but we do our best to keep the few things that we do very deep. And for us, there's just 5 things that we do. And so what's working is our ability to say no. And every church is going to have a set of ministry values or a set of things that they do well. And we've just learned to say no to anything that doesn't line up with those 5 things. We call them the Focus 5. Our church name is called Focus. And so maybe we're living up to our name. So, we have our weekend worship experiences. We believe that you're going to encounter God on the weekend. And people say that term all the time, encounter God. But for us, that plays out on Sunday mornings. We're going to have good Sunday morning services. People come back when the Sunday service is good. They don't come back when the Sunday service isn't good. So they're going to encounter God on the weekend. Then we're going to leave a legacy through the next generation. We're going to have the best, cleanest, safest, and most fun kids and youth ministry that you've ever seen. And so we're going to encounter God on the weekend. We're going to leave a legacy through the next generation. Then we're going to change the world through outreach and mission. We're going to change the world through outreach and mission. So we're not going to be an outreach center, but we are going to change the world by partnering with other ministries. You won't find a food bank or a food pantry or a clothing closet here on campus, but you will find us on the streets with those who are already doing that well. So encounter God, leave a legacy, change the world. And then we believe that you can make a difference through your serving, through being involved in serving. We just prioritize people being involved and making a difference in the local church through serving. So we have encounter God, next generation, leave a legacy, change the world through outreach, make a difference through serving. And then lastly, real relationships through groups. So our groups are semester based. We're about to have groups signing day is what we call it, when everyone, when someone commits to a team, they get drafted by a team, they sign the contract. So everybody gets drafted by a group this weekend. And we have all the mascots from the local colleges, NC State, UNC, and Duke coming out. And it's a big ordeal. So that's how people find real relationships. Hard to connect with somebody staring at the back of their head, on a pew for 36 minutes on a Sunday, but you find real relationships through groups. So by doing only those 5 things, we have discovered that our church can go deep, even though we might not be very wide. And we say no to a lot of stuff.
Wow, I love that. Listen, the way that I'm wired, saying no is so difficult sometimes, and I'm sure you get it too. It's got to be an intentional practice, like that. You almost have to have that button, that no, like that was easy button, but the just say no button, because I think I think a good leader wants to make a big impact, right? And so sometimes we can get confused and think the more we do, the more impact that we're making. But I heard something the other day. They said a little less of you will produce the best of you.
Mhm.
And I'm like, man, I need to get that tattooed like on my
Yep.
arm. I mean, and it's so true. I just told our executive pastor the other day. Currently, we sit in a worship we're like the worship pastor over every environment in our church. So on Sundays we're leading in Maine, but we're still shepherding. What's happening in kids' church, what's happening in students. We're kind of looking at what's happening. And I told him, I said, man, I've got to figure out how to not do the thing all the time. Like, how do I just take a Sunday, let the team crush it because they will, and me go around and just be able to pastor and shepherd these other environments?
Yeah, instead of
And
working in it, how do you get to work on it, you know?
I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, exactly. And so it's just like that a little less of you will produce the best of you. And it is so true. It's like when you come back, and you can probably speak into this. It's like when you come back from vacation or sabbatical, that message is fire. Like you're ready. You got your illustration, your points, your statistics, your quotes. I mean, it's like it's like that first kind of time back on the bike after taking a break.
Yeah.
It really does produce something extra in you, but you don't get there, like you were saying, without saying no, right? And
Mhm.
being intentional about it and owning that. I love the focus five, man. You're gonna have to write that down and just and email it over, dude. It's so good. Because I think you're right. I think um we do get, I guess, like we get cluttered when we let
Yes,
too many things in. So I love the
yes.
clarity there. Um, so the next thing I want to hear from your heart is just, and this isn't the fun stuff. This is kind of like the This is I was telling you off mic earlier. These whole conversations stemmed from what we would do as a team. We just kind of shifted the way our organization runs. So we've got to figure out how to do this again. But we would get together every Monday and we would do wins and opportunities. And opportunities got shortened to ops, which got shortened to oops. So we had
Mhm.
our wins and our oops, like oops, what happened? And the wins were great. I think we need the wins. We got to celebrate the wins. You got to treat yourself if you're a Parks and Rec fan. You got to go get the ice cream every once in a while.
Right.
If you're Chad Veach and you get the McFlurry on Sunday, whatever you do, you gotta win sometimes. But it was always in that moment of what's your opportunity this week? What didn't go well? What didn't happen the way you thought it was going to happen? And so I just would love to hear from your heart in this season right now. What's not working, or what maybe worked before, and man, it ain't working now.
That's a great question. A lot has changed in church over the course of the last five years or so. Staffing has become really challenging. I think we all decided where we were going to live in 2020, and we moved there because a lot of people went remote or didn't have to be wherever they needed to be. And they don't want to leave because they moved to paradise. Who would want to leave where you want to live? And so staffing is really challenging from my vantage point. I don't have as much involvement in the kind of the nuance or the real particulars of our Sunday morning services. But I think keeping up with how quick tech is moving is another challenge that we're going to face. And so, we're pioneering we're experimenting on something. Um, I don't know how much of this I should share or not, but we're looking to go multilingual and multi-site at the same time.
Wow.
And instead of using a Spanish campus pastor to do the message, we're converting everything through an AI service that will basically look like I'm preaching in Spanish, which is new. I don't know of anyone there are probably many people that are already doing it, but we don't know of anyone that's already doing it like that. So we're going to have a video venue in a different language. That's challenging. That's tough to figure out. How do you turn a sermon around from 8:30 in the morning to 10 a.m. in a whole nother language in just a matter of 2 hours or so? That's something that we're figuring out right now. How do you do church in another language but still keep the values of our Anglo culture? That's really tough too. The Hispanic culture is different than the Anglo culture with good reason. And so we're
Right.
trying our best to do what we do at Focus and not lose the culture that got us here. And those are some fun challenges that we're facing right now. Obviously, real estate, when you never knew how much you'd have to be in real estate whenever you go multi-site and whenever you go to build a building and ask for permits and see if land is available or find a venue. No one prepares you for the immense amount of time you're going to spend dealing with real estate. So
Wow.
if you're out there, you're portable right now, you're wishing you had a building, just know that it's not always as good as it seems. All right. Right now, if you're portable, you don't have to fill up the toilet paper dispenser. You don't have to pay for the Wi-Fi. You
Come
don't have to
on.
have 7 days worth of liability insurance. You don't have property taxes. You don't have to worry about if the air conditioner breaks or if the the heating element goes out. And so everything you pray for sometimes comes on God's timing, because it's a lot. So I know that that's a lot of different things, but in my mind, it's like staffing, different languages, and real estate would be like the three big challenges that I'm from my seat that I'm facing.
Wow. Yeah. No, I mean, I think we can all kind of agree there. You mentioned there is some blessing in the mobile side. I mean, you got to get up early and unload the trailer, and that is sometimes the worst. But you're right. Like the nuances that when you take that next step into a facility, that the things that come with it are just insane.
You
It's
don't
just
have to think
crazy.
about your building when you're portable, except on Sunday mornings, but you have to think about your building almost every day when you're permanent. So like every
Wow.
day something has to be fixed or repaired or adjusted or paid for. When you're portable, you get a set contract for a set amount of hours, and that's it. You don't really think about your space as much. And so if you think about how much time when you're permanent, we have one long-term lease, one permanent location, and then one portable location in a movie theater. So we live in the three different kind of realms of property ownership. We have a weekly rental at the movie theater. We have a long-term lease in Apex, and then a property that we're building onto. So I'm in the middle of all three of those dynamics.
Wow. So, okay, so you mentioned that it's a virtual kind of venue thing. So the screen drops down and then boom, you're live. Now, is that happening in live time? Are you able to kind of curate the message and then kind of mail it out? How does that work with your culture?
Yeah, so we have what's called a sync up moment where all the campuses sync up together, and it actually doesn't happen during the sermon portion. It happens during the last song, and so we're singing together as a church. People would maybe not consider it real time, but it is same day, and so they might be singing with the 8:30 service, but it might be at their campus a 10 a.m. service, and so our human behavior doesn't know that that's from an hour and a half ago.
Sure.
It feels very much live. Everything we do feels real time, and so they'll sync up with the worship, and that unifies the church, and it warms up the first time guests to the idea of being a video venue. Now every venue has live musicians, every venue has a worship leader,
Sure.
and so it's never a watch party on the worship side of things. It's normally our MD from our main campus is in the ears of everyone at every location. He's saying, calling out the numbers, doing all the things that the MDs do. Crash big. We're going to end on the
Love
3,
it.
and then occasionally we'll end the worship set and cut to a message bumper. And from that message bumper, I'll be right behind the podium by that time, behind the pulpit. So occasionally when I get crazy with it, I'll just jump up there and merge. We like the ministry moment after the merger. Like after I say merger, I'm talking about all the campuses are synced up, and then I'll do a ministry moment where I'll look at the camera and say, at all of our locations, let's sing it one more time. Most of the time, I've disciplined myself to let the bumper video play, because with multiple services, if I get on a ministry moment, there's really no timestamp on that. And I could go for 10, 15 extra minutes that then hurts our kids' ministry and our parking lot when it comes to turning over the facility for the next service. So I've had to really discipline myself to say, just let them into worship, let the bumper video play, and then I can start. And that kind of saves us about 10 minutes most weekends.
Wow, you said a lot there. Number one, are you a musician? Because you're speaking the language. Either you're a musician or you've had a set of ears in when they're calling out. Because the numbers, I mean, I'm impressed that Do you know what the 3 is, or do
Uh, I,
you
I
just know that?
so I was in a band in college. We
Okay.
toured a little bit. I played drums and bass, and then I'm a church kid. So
Come on.
anytime someone was missing, I just had to at least go up there and figure it out. So I could probably fill in at your average church worship team. I'm definitely not a maestro. My wife is the executive over all of our weekend worship experiences. She does music, and she is very, very talented. So it's in our house all the time. And then I'm
Sure.
probably more experience or environment uh, heavy on my in my thinking. So more of like a, if you think of like a producer of a worship service, that's probably more of how I lean. Some guys, if the haze machine is on or off, they wouldn't even be able to tell. But I can tell when a haze machine is either on or off, or too much or too little, or when the lights are moving too much or the lights are not moving enough, or the font choice of the lyrics.
Come
So like
on.
that kind of stuff, I lean that way. Uh, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I can set an atmosphere. I understand atmosphere and setting that up.
I love that. I love that. I wanna kind of pick your brain here. This is kind of, I didn't pre-send you this, so we're just gonna go see what happens. But
Sure.
one of the kind of where we are as a culture, just to kind of like pull back the curtain on what God's doing here. We're here in the Atlanta area, and our church is about 20 years old, and it's a church plant of another church. So altogether, there's 5 or 6 of our kind of churches around the area that kind of have our stamp on it, whether they're most of them now have moved into their own kind of like they're like they operate more of like a church plant than
Yeah,
they do.
autonomy. Right.
Yeah, yes, that's a big word for somebody from the
Mhm,
South, but yes,
mhm.
that word.
Yeah,
And so, but so we've been here about 2 years, my wife and I, and historically, it was planted as a very kind of like Baptist kind of non-denominational field church.
sure.
Now I was raised as Pentecostal as they come, probably. And when we joined staff here, we could feel there was a shift, like God was doing something new. And here we are 19 months in, and it has been like, I mean, when I tell you there's a tangible difference in the
Mhm.
atmosphere. It is so surreal, but we're having to learn how to navigate the structure and the spontaneous because it's there. And
Mhm.
and I think you uh could probably kind of bear witness to this. Like, we were raised probably in the same era. Shout out Taylor Swift. In the same era where it was like it was all spontaneous and very
Right.
little structure, and like you said, it limits, and it's dishonoring, almost, if you're not careful, like, you
Mhm.
know what I mean, like, to the parking lot, the kids church. They ran out of goldfish because you know
Right.
what I'm saying, because the fire tunnel went too long. If you don't know what a fire tunnel is,
Right.
maybe count yourself blessed. I mean, I don't know, but you know what I'm saying. So, like, could you just talk to us a little bit about how you've been able to find success in that structure, but yet spirit led? Because there's just nothing like, and you know this. I'm preaching to the choir. There's nothing like that touch of God on a service that maybe it wasn't an item in planning center, but God's moving. You know what I'm saying? Like that extra 3 to 5 minutes when we just that ministry moment that happens, like you said,
Mhm.
sometimes. But talk to us about how you found success in that structure, spirit filled
Yeah.
kind of balance.
There's not a lot of us that do video venue and are still traditionally Pentecostal. There's just very few uh, that still function like you're saying in that ministry moment. I think for us, it's been trying to get there sooner in the service. And
Mm.
so if we can get in there sooner, when I say get in there, I'm talking about, let's not dilly dally too much. Our number one objective, and I teach this to our team all the time, is like, let's get into the presence of God as quickly as possible, and let's stay there for as long as possible. Um, and so I think a lot of times we limit the Holy Spirit to having to move after the third song, or only when we sing the bridge to Oceans, Spirit lead me. And then, only at the end of the sermon can we do prayer time at the altar. And I feel like that's a disservice to the Holy Spirit, putting the Holy Spirit in a, people tell me all the time, you're putting the Holy Spirit in a box. I'm like, no, you're putting the Holy Spirit in a box because he only can move for 5 hours at the end of the service. And so it's really important we have a whole planning center deal. I have a producer right next to me, but if I feel something, I'll say, hey, let's run that song again. And he'll talk into his little microphone into the MD and say, hey, pastor wants to run it back, and we, I'll live produce it right then and there. But what I found is, in order to build a healthy church, they need a well-balanced diet. And so
Mm.
there needs to be good spiritual moments where the Holy Spirit moves on the hearts of people and people are crying out, then there needs to be sound doctrine and theology where people are being stretched in their thinking. Then there needs to be evangelistic opportunity where people who don't know Jesus would feel very okay with responding to the gospel, whether that's by raising of a hand or coming forward or praying with someone. So like it's not one or the other. It's like this well-balanced diet of moments. And so on Easter Sunday, there's probably going to be a lot of lost people that don't know what a ministry moment is, or a word of prophecy, or a word of knowledge, or the moving of the gifts. So we program according to what our audience is going to be. But if you came to a revival night or a first Wednesday, dude, bring your shofar. We don't care. It's like, it's fine. Bring the oil. Let's just put it on everybody. Bring the fire tunnel. But I think a lot of people confuse like Sunday morning needs to be this way. And it's not. It's a well-balanced diet. There are some weekends where I don't do an altar call, where I pray to dismiss, and we go home with rich theology and things to think about. Then there are some Sundays where it's very practical. It's like I went home and I know how to be a better husband or be a better wife or be a better father. Then there are some Sundays where it's like we don't know what happened, but God really moved in the service. And the mistake I think a lot of times we make is we make it only one when it should be a well-balanced diet. And if your programming is good, then you could actually be diverse in your church experience within the guardrails of what you're able to do. You reach more people that way too. You reach Hispanics, you reach Black people, you reach Pentecostals, you reach non-denoms, you reach Catholics, because there's moments during the month where they're like, oh, I can relate to that communion because we used to take communion every week at my church, or I can relate to the ending of that sermon because that's hooping, that's real preaching right there. Or I can relate to that because they sang it in Spanish. And when you diversify within the guardrails of what you're able to do, right? So we're not looking for you to try hard. That's what the kids call it. Like, don't be a try hard. Where if you can't sing in Spanish, don't. But if you can learn to diversify your preaching style, the outcome of the service, you'll reach more people that way.
Wow. Write the book, sir. Love it. I love it, man. The balanced diet, bro. I love that. I jokingly tell people I'm Baptist, and I'm grateful, being raised. I'm not sure if you were raised Assemblies of God, but being raised Church of God and all of it. And then almost having some negative experience, like, because it can be
Sure.
sometimes what we call spiritual is actually sloppy. And you know what I'm saying? And
Totally.
so having some negative experience, kind of taking a step back. The church that we helped plant was very much a non-denominational, probably very similar to like a CMN model type thing. Having that experience and understanding the spiritual discipline and the spiritual intentionality that's there is just incredible. And I remember something a mentor of mine told me one time that changed the game for me. He said, "What's spontaneous to us is intentional to God."
Yes.
And now it's changed the way you mentioned good programming. I love that. Like that I'm gonna take that and put it in my pantry. I got a list on my phone. I'm gonna put it in there because I love that, because you got to be ready, right? Have it in your back pocket. Like, we could go, but we may not. Like, we don't have to, but we could. Maybe at 9 o'clock we don't, but maybe at 11 o'clock, man, like
That's right.
Sister Mary she's weeping
That's
on
right.
the front row, and we can't ignore it, and we're just gonna lean
Yeah.
in a little bit and just see what God does. I love that. If your programming is good, wow.
Mhm.
I mean, program with the power in mind. You know what I mean? I'll forward the book, and nobody knows who I am, but I'll do it. I'll just, I'll endorse it. I don't know, but I love that, man. Well, dude, I promise you 35 minutes because your schedule is incredible, and I'm jealous. But if I could borrow 30 more seconds, I just want
Cool.
to end. I want to end this with well, I say 30 seconds because we're half Pentecostal, but if you had one thing you could say uh, to a leader listening right now, what's on your heart, what's just been on repeat in your mind and in your spirit, what would that one thing be?
Never forget that people are involved. I think that's one of the biggest things, that we become professionals and we forget that people are involved. And so I liken it to the a lady who pours perfume on Jesus's feet, getting ready for him to be buried. And the disciples' first thought was, how much did that perfume cost? We could have sold that perfume. We could have sold that, and we could have given that money away. And they became analytical and desensitized to the presence of God around the table, because they had been with Jesus so much that when someone actually came in with genuine worship, it offended the people who were closest to Jesus. So my encouragement to a pastor, my encouragement to a leader would be to never forget that people are involved. When you design that graphic, people engage with that graphic. When you design that piece of merch, people are at the other side of that piece of merch. When you write that song, when you write that sermon, there are people on the other side of these things. So let's not get so analytical or so professional or so full of process and protocol that we desensitize ourselves to the fact that people are on the other side of everything that we do. It keeps us in the room. Instead of, I find myself looking at the camera a lot when I preach because we're multi-site. And sometimes I have to remind myself, stay in the room. There are people even in the room as well. And if not, I'll become a professional. And the worst thing for any pastor to become is a professional. So that's what I would say.
Wow, dude, that was incredible. That was amazing. Thank you so much, Pastor Mike, for just hanging out with us for a few minutes. I think I got the one open slot in your schedule today. So
You did.
thank
You
you,
did.
man. Thank you
I
so
came
much.
straight from the barber, as you can tell.
Come on, I love it,
Just
dude.
for
I
you.
love it, man. You ready for the weekend?
Ready.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, let's stay in touch, Pastor Mike, man. Next time we're in near or close to Raleigh, I'm not sure if you've ever been to Biscuitville, but
I
bro,
have been to a Biscuitville. A lot of the guys in my hunting club love Biscuitville.
I'll have to save my carbs and my calories for it because there ain't nothing
I'm not a
keto.
huge fan. I'm not a huge fan, but all my hunting buddies, they all love Biscuitville. They love Bojangles and they love Biscuitville. Those are the two places.
Well, we can still be friends despite that last word of blasphemous speech. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Well, I love it, man. Well, thank you so much again for your time. Y'all, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Remember to like, share, subscribe, tell your mama and them. And we'll see you next time on the Johnny B podcast. Let's roll it out.